How is it going, YouTube? Mo Sports Network here, and this is take two of recording this video because my mic wasn't plugged in when I recorded it the first time. So, hopefully I still cover everything properly. I had a banger the first time, so hopefully I can cover all those points again. Also, I'm going to say this at the beginning of the video. Make sure after you watch this video, check out my Ohio University Dynasty. I've been working hard on that. There are some twists in it that you will not want to miss. If you're not interested in the gameplays, though, and you just want to watch for my draft grades, I understand that. I've been missing because of college finals, and we're going to dive right in talking about the NFC North draft grades. We're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers. And I am not a huge fan of this draft, much like everyone else, and it is because I don't know what direction the Packers are going. Do they want to win in the future? Do they want to win now? I'm very confused. So, last year they went 13-3 with Aaron Rodgers and were missing just a couple pieces that I think could have had them over the Niners, especially now that the Niners could potentially have a Super Bowl loss hangover, could set up the Packers in a position very pretty for the NFC next season, and they did not help themselves out in this draft very much at all. First round, they picked Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love has a lot of potential, and I think Green Bay is a place he could go and be very good. That being said, they want to win this year, and Jordan Love is not ready this year. Maybe 5 years down the line, this is a good pick, but I think the Packers should be in the direction to win now. And Jordan Love does not help with that. And then they take A.J. Dillon in the second. That doesn't really help them in any way unless they're planning on getting rid of Aaron Jones or he's hurt or something, because Aaron Jones led the NFL in touchdowns for running backs last season. And so I don't really understand that, especially with Williams and Jones there. Then Josiah DeGuara, they need a tight end sort of, but at the same time, DeGuara isn't your prototypical NFL tight end. He could be something if they the offense schemes him open in certain ways and produces snaps for him. But that pick confuses me. I like the Kamal Martin pick. Good linebacker out of Minnesota. He's a pretty solid fifth rounder. He'll contribute in special teams year one. Then you have three offensive linemen back to back to back. I don't know about that one. They're all the sixth and seventh round is going to be depth pieces anyways. I'm not going to mention too many of them in this video because a lot of them are just going to play on special teams and be depth. And so they kind of swung and a miss on all those picks, especially when their receivers like KJ Hill was still there, I believe. Other receivers, not on the top. I just was screaming at the Packers, take KJ Hill. It's so easy, and they just never did it with all of those picks. They had 3 6th-round picks they could have taken them, didn't take them with any. So shame on the Packers for that. I give this grade overall a D for no direction. Or they have a direction, and I think it's the complete wrong one. Their direction looks like, forget Aaron Rodgers, we're going to start building this team for the future with Jordan Love and A.J. Dillon. And by the time that, Aaron Jones is gone and isn't relevant, maybe A.J. Dillon is starting to not be relevant anymore with his age. And Jordan Love's not going to be a thing for 3 years down the line. And this draft kind of just seems like a preparing for the future draft, but I don't think Green Bay is in the position to start doing that. I think they should stay in that win now mentality. And that's why I'm giving it a D. They should go for the win this year, and they're just not with this draft. So D for the Packers in my eyes. We're going to flip to the Minnesota Vikings. I loved this draft. I freaking loved it. And then there's a question here about philosophy, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. And the question is, you see the Vikings have 4 7th-round and 2 6th-round picks, and that's because they traded down a lot in this draft. And then the question you have to ask is, are those late-round picks, should you trade up with them to take a more sure player, or do you keep them so you have more chances at getting a strong, potentially hitting in the late rounds? And since they ended up with Josh Metellus and Kenny Willekes, two players who I think have pretty good starting potential, they will be special teams players year one for sure, but I think they have potential here in Minnesota. I think their philosophy is working out, but I don't know. But I think it's working. But we're going to go on to the draft, which I freaking love. Justin Jefferson, I give it an A plus on draft night, and Jeff Gladney, I give it an A plus on draft night. Corner and wide receiver, in my opinion, were the Vikings' two biggest needs. Filled those beautifully with two very good value guys for where they got picked. I had them both going much earlier. Then you get Ezra Cleveland, not necessarily going to start right away, but offensive line is still sort of an issue for the Vikings. He can plug and play most places. So Ezra Cleveland, I don't know how you're going to keep him off the field, so that's a solid pick. Cam Dantzler, with how weak that corner room is in Minnesota right now, Cam Dantzler is going to come in and maybe get a starting spot, in my opinion, as a third rounder. Then edge rusher was their next weakest position. They got DJ Wanham and James Lynch, not necessarily edge rushers, but they're going to bolster the defensive line very well. And then Troy Dye in the fourth round, 26th pick in the fourth round is the key. There were some linebackers in the fourth round that kind of made my head tilt before Troy Dye went off the board. And so I think that's a very solid pick, just linebacker depth you could always use there, and he was a good value pick. The rest of the players probably just going to be special teamers for the Vikings, especially this year, and you can't really complain about that. But again, Kenny Willekes, Josh Metellus, solid players. Nate Stanley was my ninth or 10th best quarterback in the draft, and seventh round, that's not too offensive as a backup for Kirk Cousins, so I don't really mind that pick either. A plus for the Vikings in my eyes. I think they knocked it out of the park. They have an interesting philosophy that I think a lot of teams don't go by, and I'm curious to see if it works out for them. So A plus for the Vikings, and now we're going to move on to the Chicago Bears. I'm not as harsh on this draft as the Packers because the Bears had less chances to mess up, but I still think they messed up at certain points. I like the Jalen Johnson pick a lot. It's a lot better than the A.J. Dillon pick, I'll say that much. But Jalen Johnson in the second round, very solid. The rest of the picks I'm sort of iffy on. Travis Gibson out of Tulsa, I believe. Not bad necessarily. Darnell Mooney, also not a bad player either. He could get some snaps. I think Vildor, Hambright, and Simmons pretty much going to be special teamers exclusively in their career with the Bears, if not in their career in the NFL. And then the guy I've been avoiding is Cole Kmet. And it's interesting because I think Cole Kmet could be the best tight end on the Bears roster immediately, if not Jimmy Graham. But they have 9 of them already, which is just crazy that you would spend your first pick in the draft on a tight end. Cole Kmet was the best tight end in this draft. But you have 9 already, and you take Cole Kmet. Pardon me. And Cole Kmet this year, this was a very weak tight end here. So if you think, oh, I got the best tight end in the draft in the second round, usually you think that's good. But Cole Kmet, this is a weak tight end class. I think in many years, Cole Kmet would be a third or fourth round tight end. So I feel like this one was a bit of a reach. Was not a fan of this pick when it happened. So I'm going to give the Bears a C. Not much better than the Packers because, again, they didn't have as many picks, obviously. They had 3 fifth-rounders and 2 seventh-rounders, so a lot later than the Packers. They didn't have a first, third, or fourth-round pick. I really like the Jalen Johnson pick. I think he has good potential to pair with Fuller. It's going to continue to make that secondary strong. But the Kmet pick is a bit confusing. I hope he gets on the field, but first-year tight ends, not much experience producing in the NFL a lot of the time. And then the rest of the picks were depth picks. So I can't beat up the draft too much. I feel like the only picks I can really critique are Kmet and Johnson. I really like Johnson, really don't like Kmet, so I'm just going to go for the C there for the Bears. Hopefully Cole Kmet proves me wrong and is an all-pro for the Bears. I really like the Bears. They are a fun team. I like Mitch Trubisky a lot, even though he's probably not the answer. I was cheered for them 2 years ago when they were making their little run. So hopefully the Bears, with this draft, some of the picks pan out. I just don't see it very much right now. So a C for the Bears. Then we're going to go on to the Detroit Lions, which was another draft I loved. I know, I'm loving a lot of things. I'm not being too harsh. I mean, I was harsh on the Packers and Bears. But I think the Lions did everything very appropriately. Their first 6 picks, I think actually every pick they made was perfect value. Jeff Okudah, 3rd overall pick, I think is right where he should have gone. DeAndre Swift, a lot of people can say they dislike this pick. I really like it because Kerryon Johnson hasn't been able to stay healthy, and his contract is gonna expire fairly soon. They have their replacement for him ready to go in the stables, and so he doesn't have to worry about getting too many yards on his tires right away. And then year two or so, he can take off, and he can take off next year maybe, even if Kerryon Johnson gets hurt. I really like that pick. Probably the best running back in the draft. I was between him and J.K. Dobbins. So Swift, solid pick. I think Julian Okwara, Jonah Jackson, and Logan Stenberg all have starter potential. Jackson and Stenberg will be fighting for one of the starting guard spots in Detroit, and Okwara, I think, is a good enough player to compete for one of the starting edge positions in Detroit. So solid. Quintez Cephas is a depth wide receiver. They have a very good receiving core in Detroit already with Galladay, an aging Marvin Jones, I must admit, but still, that's a very good 1-2 punch there in Detroit. And then to add Quintez Cephas, another guy who can produce there, and then Jason Huntley, John Pazinski, John. And John P. and then Jason Cornell or Jay-Sean Cornell out of Ohio State in the 7th round. Sorry to John, by the way, about butchering his name. I think they're appropriate value as well. I don't think the Lions reached on anything, but at the same time, I don't think they got any steals either necessarily, if that makes sense. So I am going to rate this draft an A. They did enough to do everything very well. I think they filled a lot of position on the team. They added some starters, which I can't say for the Packers, and I can't say for the Bears also in their division. So the Lions definitely improved in the draft, and I don't really have much critique on many of their players. So A, maybe A minus, depending on your philosophy about running back that early in the I think the second round's pretty appropriate for DeAndre Swift, I'd say. So I'm going to lean towards A for the Lions and be more positive. I really like this draft from them. So if we can recap real quick, the Packers, I'm giving them a D for their bad direction. They're not building to win this year. I think they completely should. 3 years down the line, this draft could be an A for all I know, because Jordan Love can completely pan out. But Aaron Rodgers is their future right now for the next 3 years, and Packers fans want to see them win. Didn't even address receiver, which is their biggest need. So there's that for the Packers. Didn't love that. A plus for the Vikings. Filled 3 of their biggest needs in the first 3 rounds, or first 4 rounds. Got really good value in Jefferson and Gladney. Got good players across the board. Troy Dye, good value. Kenny Willekes, good value. Cam Dantzler, good value. James Lynch, good value. So I really like what the Vikings did. A plus there. Bears didn't really have the ammunition to have a good draft. I mean, they got Khalil Mack with some of these picks, so you can't really hammer it too hard. At the same time, not in love with the Cole Kmet pick. Really like the Jalen Johnson pick in the secondary for the Bears. So I'm just going to throw it a C. C for Chicago. No, just a C. Average draft. Not failing. It's fine. And then finally the Lions. I have an A grade. They didn't go above and beyond like the Vikings did, but I think they got appropriate value across the board. And I really like what they did. Jeff Okudah, DeAndre Swift, Julian Okwara, Jonah Jackson, all probably will start next year. Logan Stenberg has the potential to start. Quintez Cephas could get snaps. And when 6 of your picks all get snaps in the first year, it's a very successful draft. So I'm going to give an A to the Lions. So that's all from me today. Go ahead and check out my Ohio University Dynasty and NCAA 14 if you have any interest in that. If you don't, I completely understand. The AFC West grades will be coming soon. So that's all from me right here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next Draft Grades video. Peace out.